My beloved child, wait, before you scroll away, there is something you were never supposed to hear this early. Somewhere between coincidence and destiny, a conversation took place. Not in a crowded room. Not in a place anyone could point to on a map. It happened in a quiet space where truth speaks louder than noise. And the subject of that conversation was you. For a long time, you believed your story was unfolding in silence. You thought no one noticed the battles you fought behind closed doors. The moments you questioned yourself. The dreams you carried without telling a single soul. Yet while you were busy wondering whether anyone truly understood you, someone was learning your name in a way that went far beyond introductions. And this is where the story becomes unexpected. Because the person destined to cross paths with you did not speak about your appearance first. They did not speak about status, achievements, or the image others see. No. The first thing mentioned was your resilience. The strange strength you carry even when you feel exhausted. The way you continue moving forward despite setbacks. The way you quietly rebuild yourself every time life asks you to begin again. Pause for a second. When was the last time you gave yourself credit for that? You see, most people measure themselves by what they have gained. But there are rare souls whose greatest achievement is simply refusing to give up. And during that private meeting, that quality stood out more than anything else. Not because it was loud. Because it was real. Now here's what may surprise you even more. The conversation was not perfect praise. It was honest. Deeply honest. Your soulmate wondered about the walls you have built. They sensed that you sometimes hide your brightest qualities behind caution. They felt that there are words you want to say but often keep locked away. Dreams you hesitate to chase because part of you fears disappointment. Yet instead of seeing weakness, they saw potential. Think about that. What if the very things you worry about are the same things that make you unforgettable? What if your unfinished chapters are exactly what draw the right people toward you? The discussion continued. Your soulmate spoke about a feeling they couldn't fully explain. A sense that their future somehow connected with someone they had not completely met yet. Like seeing a distant light through the fog. Not clear enough to identify. But impossible to ignore. And somehow, every detail kept leading back to you. Not because you are flawless. Because you are becoming. There is a difference. Flawless people exist only in imagination. But people who evolve, who learn, who transform themselves through experience, those are the ones who leave lasting impressions. Those are the ones who change lives. Stay with me, because the most important part has not arrived yet. At one point, a question emerged during that private meeting. Will they recognize their own value before we meet? The room grew quiet. Not out of doubt. Out of curiosity. Because your next chapter depends less on timing and more on awareness. Many people spend years waiting for a sign while ignoring the evidence already surrounding them. The opportunities. The growth. The lessons. The inner voice urging them toward something greater. And lately, whether you've noticed it or not, life has been placing clues in front of you. A thought that won't leave your mind. A dream that keeps returning. A sudden desire to become more than you were yesterday. These are not random interruptions. They are signals that your path is shifting. The version of you that felt lost cannot walk into the future being prepared for you. A stronger version must emerge first. A clearer version. A more confident version. And surprisingly, your soulmate understands that. They are not waiting for perfection. They are waiting for alignment. There is a difference between being ready and being complete. No one is ever completely finished growing. But there comes a moment when you finally stop shrinking yourself to fit old expectations. Maybe that moment is closer than you think. Maybe it begins today. Or maybe it begins with one decision you haven't made yet. Either way, something powerful was said before that private meeting ended. Something simple. Something unforgettable. They said they hoped you would keep believing in possibilities, even during seasons when nothing seemed to be changing. Because sometimes the greatest transformations happen invisibly. Beneath the surface. Beyond what the eyes can measure. And while you thought nothing was moving, pieces of your future were quietly finding their place. So if you've been questioning your journey, hear this carefully. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not wandering without direction. The conversation about you revealed something extraordinary. Your story is still unfolding, and the most surprising chapter has not yet been written. But before that chapter can begin, there is one realization waiting for you. And when it arrives, everything you've been wondering about will start making sense. Wait until the next part. Because what was revealed afterward changed the entire direction of the conversation. My beloved child, hold on, because what happened after that conversation took an unexpected turn. Just when it seemed everything important had already been said, a new question entered the room. And the moment it was spoken, the atmosphere changed completely. The question was simple. What happens when they finally see themselves the way others see them? No one answered immediately. Because the answer carried weight. You may not realize this, but one of the greatest mysteries in life is the gap between who we truly are and who we believe we are. Many people walk through the world carrying outdated versions of themselves. They continue identifying with old failures, old fears, old limitations. Meanwhile, their actual potential waits patiently in the background, hoping to be noticed. And somehow, your soulmate sensed this about you. They sensed that you have grown more than you give yourself credit for. That you've survived challenges that would have stopped others. That you've gained wisdom through experiences you rarely talk about. Yet there are still moments when you look in the mirror and see the person you used to be instead of the person you're becoming. Think about that for a moment. How many opportunities have been missed because someone underestimated themselves? How many beautiful beginnings were delayed because a person believed they needed more time before stepping forward? The conversation moved deeper. Your soulmate described seeing someone standing at the edge of a new horizon. Someone ready for expansion but unaware of how close they actually were. Like a traveler who spends hours searching for a destination while standing only a few steps away from it. And strangely enough, every description pointed toward you. Not the version of you from years ago. Not the version shaped by temporary setbacks. The version emerging right now. The one learning to trust their instincts. The one starting to recognize their worth. The one slowly realizing that their future does not have to resemble their past. Pause here. Because this next part matters. There was discussion about timing. People often imagine destiny as a fixed schedule. They think certain events happen on exact dates, no matter what choices are made. But the truth is far more fascinating. Destiny responds to awareness. The moment you become ready to receive a new chapter, that chapter begins moving toward you with incredible speed. Opportunities notice confidence. Connections notice authenticity. Possibilities notice courage. And recently, whether you've realized it or not, you've been developing all three. Perhaps that's why certain situations no longer feel comfortable. Perhaps that's why old habits seem harder to maintain. Perhaps that's why you felt an unusual pull toward growth. Something inside you knows change is approaching. Your soulmate felt it too. In fact, one statement from that private meeting surprised everyone. They said they weren't looking for someone who had all the answers. They were looking for someone willing to keep asking better questions. Someone curious enough to grow. Someone brave enough to evolve. Someone strong enough to remain hopeful when certainty was unavailable. Does that sound familiar? Because if it does, you're beginning to understand why this conversation was so significant. Now, before we continue, if this message resonates with you, leave a comment below with the words, "I am ready." Not for anyone else. For yourself. Sometimes a simple declaration becomes the first step toward a powerful transformation. And if these messages inspire you to see your journey differently, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Because the conversation was far from over. In fact, what happened next revealed something few people ever hear. Your soulmate began talking about the future. Not specific dates. Not exact places. A feeling. A vision. They described two paths crossing at precisely the right moment. Not because everything was perfect, but because both people had finally become ready for the lessons, opportunities, and growth waiting ahead. And here's the surprising part. The vision wasn't centered on romance alone. It was centered on purpose. Growth. Expansion. The idea that two people can inspire each other to become greater than they would have become alone. That is what truly captured their attention. Not what you own. Not what you've achieved. But who you're becoming. The room grew quiet once again. And then one final observation was made before the discussion moved forward. They said that you often underestimate the impact you have on others. You think your words are ordinary. You think your presence goes unnoticed. You think your efforts disappear into the background. But that's not what they saw. They saw someone capable of influencing lives simply by showing up as their authentic self. And if that realization fully reaches you one day, it could change everything. Because the future waiting ahead isn't asking you to become someone else. It's asking you to fully become yourself. And what was revealed after that realization was even more surprising than the conversation itself. You'll understand why in the next part. My beloved child, listen carefully, because this is the moment where the story takes a turn no one expected. The private meeting had already uncovered truths about your strength, your growth, and the future quietly forming around you. But then something happened that shifted the entire discussion. A single thought entered the room. And suddenly, everyone became focused on one thing. Your next decision. Not next year. Not someday. The next decision. Because sometimes a lifetime changes direction because of one choice that seems insignificant in the moment. A conversation you almost didn't have. A door you almost didn't open. An opportunity you almost ignored. A risk you almost refused to take. The strange thing about turning points is that they rarely announce themselves. They don't arrive with flashing signs. They often appear disguised as ordinary moments. And according to what was revealed during that meeting, one of those moments is drawing closer to you. Pause for a second. What if the opportunity you've been waiting for doesn't look the way you expected? What if the answer arrives through a path you never considered? What if the breakthrough you've been asking for has already started moving toward you? These questions weren't asked out of uncertainty. They were asked because your soulmate sensed something unique about your journey. They sensed that life has been preparing you through experiences that didn't make sense at the time. The setbacks. The delays. The unexpected detours. The moments when you thought progress had stopped. From a distance, those experiences looked random. But from a higher perspective, they looked connected. Like pieces of a puzzle slowly revealing a larger image. And that image was becoming clearer. The conversation continued. Someone mentioned that you have reached a point where fear and possibility are standing side by side. Every person encounters this crossroads eventually. One voice says stay comfortable. The other says grow. One voice says wait. The other says trust yourself. One voice points toward the past. The other points toward the future. And whether you realize it or not, you've been hearing both voices recently. The remarkable part is this. Your soulmate never questioned which voice would ultimately win. They already believed you would choose growth. Not because growth is easy. Because something inside you refuses to remain small. You've felt it before. That feeling that there must be more ahead. That sense that your story contains chapters you haven't discovered yet. That quiet awareness that your potential is larger than your current circumstances. Those feelings matter. They are clues. And during the private meeting, those clues became impossible to ignore. Now stay with me, because the next revelation may surprise you most of all. There was discussion about the qualities you don't even notice in yourself. Your ability to inspire hope. Your ability to adapt. Your ability to keep moving despite uncertainty. Most people recognize their strengths only after someone points them out. And according to what was said, you may be one of those people. You focus on what still needs improvement. You focus on what remains unfinished. You focus on how far you still want to go. Meanwhile, you overlook how far you've already come. Imagine looking back 5 years. Think about the lessons you've learned. The wisdom you've gained. The resilience you've built. You are not the same person you once were. And that's exactly why your future can be different from your past. The room grew quiet again. Not because there was nothing left to say. Because what came next carried unusual significance. Your soulmate shared a vision. Not a prediction. A vision. They described you standing in a moment of clarity. A moment where doubt begins losing its grip. A moment where confidence starts replacing hesitation. A moment where you finally stop asking whether you're worthy and start asking what's possible. Can you feel the difference? One question keeps you stuck. The other moves you forward. And from everything discussed during that meeting, it became clear that your path is moving toward possibility. Toward expansion. Toward a version of yourself that no longer needs permission to believe in bigger things. Before we continue, if these words are finding you at the right time, consider sharing this message with someone who may need encouragement today. And if you've been following this journey, subscribing is simply a way of staying connected to what comes next. Because the final part contains the one statement spoken during that meeting that nobody expected, and it changes the meaning of everything you've heard so far. Because just before the conversation ended, one final realization emerged. A realization about why your path and your soulmate's path have not fully crossed yet. The answer was profound. The answer was unexpected. And once it was spoken, every previous piece of the puzzle suddenly made sense. You will hear those words in the final part. And when you do, you'll understand why this private meeting happened in the first place. My beloved child, before you go any further, hear this carefully, because the final words spoken during that private meeting carried a meaning far greater than anyone expected. After everything had been discussed, your growth, your future, your hidden strengths, and the path unfolding before you, the room became completely still. It was the kind of silence that appears when something important is about to be understood. Then the question that had lingered from the beginning was finally answered. Why haven't your paths fully crossed yet? For a moment, nobody spoke. And then came the realization that changed everything. It is not because they are far apart. Think about that. Not because of distance. Not because of bad timing. Not because of missed opportunities. The answer was far deeper. Your paths had not fully connected because both journeys were still teaching lessons that could not be skipped. The room seemed to brighten with understanding. Because suddenly every delay made sense. Every unexpected turn. Every season of waiting. Every challenge that forced growth. None of it had been meaningless. None of it had been wasted. You see, life rarely withholds something valuable without a reason. More often, it prepares us for what we are asking to receive. And according to what was revealed in that meeting, preparation has been happening all along. While you focused on reaching the destination, life focused on strengthening the traveler. While you searched for answers, life was building wisdom. While you wondered when things would happen, life was helping you become the person capable of handling what comes next. Pause here for a moment. How different would your journey feel if you viewed every challenge as preparation rather than punishment? How much lighter would your heart feel if you understood that growth was never working against you? Because that understanding became one of the most important discoveries of the entire conversation. Then came the statement nobody expected. The statement that caused everyone to look at the future differently. Your soulmate said something remarkably simple. They said they hoped you would stop waiting for your life to begin. Let that sink in. Because many people unknowingly place their happiness on hold. They tell themselves they'll feel fulfilled later. They'll believe in themselves later. They'll pursue their biggest dreams later. They'll become their true selves later. But later keeps moving. And opportunities pass unnoticed. Your soulmate understood something powerful. The future you've been hoping for does not begin when everything is perfect. It begins the moment you fully engage with the life already unfolding around you. The moment you trust your value. The moment you recognize your progress. The moment you stop measuring yourself against old versions of who you used to be. That realization transformed the entire meeting. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about waiting. It was about becoming. Not about searching. About recognizing. Not about finding worth. About remembering it. And that changed everything. The discussion moved toward one final vision. A vision of you standing confidently in a chapter you once believed was impossible. Looking back at today's worries. Looking back at today's doubts. Looking back at today's uncertainty. And smiling. Not because life became perfect. Because you finally understood your own strength. Because you finally saw how every experience had contributed to your growth. Because you finally realized that the qualities you were searching for had been developing inside you all along. And perhaps that's the greatest revelation from this private meeting. Your soulmate was never discussing someone incomplete. They were discussing someone becoming extraordinary through experience. Someone learning. Someone growing. Someone awakening to possibilities larger than they had imagined. Someone whose story is still unfolding in beautiful ways. That someone is you. And now, before this message comes to an end, remember this: you do not need to rush your journey. You do not need to compare your timeline to anyone else's. You do not need to have every answer today. Keep moving. Keep learning. Keep believing that the chapters ahead can be greater than the chapters behind.